Hi, and welcome to the Kismet podcast with me, your host, Jackie Abramov. So, I am a 12th house person in astrology, and I really resonate with the archetype of the mystic. I'm an Aries sun, a Libra moon, and a Taurus rising. And I have Neptune conjunct my South Node in Sagittarius in the eighth house. So, if you know anything about astrology, then you would know that I am here for the magic, the mysticism, and the deep understanding of life. So, this offering is to stir your inner mystic, to remember and reconnect, and to align to your own authenticity and your personal power so that you can connect with the kismet of life, get into your body, and liberate yourself. So, welcome to 2025. This is a little bit of a spontaneous jumping on to share a message today about an energy that I think is important for this year. So, personally, I am a Western tropical astrologer, and I am really fascinated by tying in the symbolism of astrology and using that with science and spirituality. My gifting is really in the subtle energy blocks that are in our shadow. And I developed my own technique called somatic release and reprogramming. And this method is getting into the unconscious mind, the shadow, and getting in tune with your nervous system so that you can release deep grief and anxieties and self-sabotage and fears and all the things, and then to actually reprogram the unconscious mind and the body. So I'm on this planet for liberation. And to me, liberation is the freedom to individuate, to experience life, to express yourself, and to align to what feels true for you today. So I am all about removing judgment so that we can move freely throughout the world with grace and with ease. And I know that this is about cultivating and manifesting your life without burning yourself out. So, personally, I do not align with the majority of spiritual teachers, New Age thought, self help, or thought leaders. And this is because they are seeking to guide collective groups of people through persuasion of the unconscious mind. And this basically means that people are teaching from polarized perspectives of right and wrong. And the way that I understand it is if we're focused on a problem, and if we're always using the language of the problem is, then we're focused on what's right and wrong. And that just perpetuates whatever problem we're focused on in one extreme or another. And this is because whatever we resist will persist. And so my work is really about stepping outside of this paradigm of right and wrong and stepping outside of prescribed thought so that we can step into this conscious into this present moment where we are conscious. And in this present moment, that's where there is choice and liberation and freedom. And that's, like I said, that's what I'm here for. And what I've learned is that no one knows the answer for you. There's no teacher, no guide, no friend, no pastor, no book. There's nothing. There's no one. The answers are not out there, they're inside of you. And so that's why I see my work as an awakener to support you in awakening to what is already inside of you. So thank you so much for being here on this unhinged, untethered journey where I am exploring the human experience and individuation and awakening. Okay, so this year, 2025, we're in this 9-year numerologically. And 9 is a number of completion. And it has this feeling of needing to clear something out to create space for the next chapter. And often we start a new year, we want to jump right into the new thing. We want to feel really high. We want to get on that high energy. And I love that. That's beautiful. But also remember that this is a year where you may need to be tying up some loose ends, finishing things in order for that next chapter to begin. Now, this year is also relating to the energy of the hermit. And the hermit is a really important archetype. Everyone has access to the hermit energy. The hermit can also relate to the Pisces energy. And this is about stepping away from the crowd. This is an energy of needing to come inward, connecting spiritually, connecting to your own spirit, and connecting to your intuition. And many of us tend to avoid this archetype, even many people who identify with 12th house energy or strong Pisces energy. Instead of doing the things I just mentioned, we might instead turn to a substance, food, something to numb ourselves out and avoid going into these deeper parts of ourselves. And that's really what the hermit energy is about. That's really what this year is inviting us to come into, the greater depth of life, of spirit, of what we're doing here. And that is in the unseen world, which is inherently quite difficult to access. So I actually want to start today by talking about boundaries. And this concept's been stirred up in me based on my own life experiences and then what I've been witnessing in the current astrology. So you may have been feeling a little bit of pressure over the last week or so. And this is because we have this strong opposition between Pluto and Mars. And symbolically, these planets are really indicating this struggle for inner power and need to meet our own needs and figure out how we are giving our power away. So this is all about understanding our power. And to understand our power is to understand boundaries. So in astrology, Pluto is symbolic of our need for power and our struggle for power. And of course, Pluto ends up getting a really bad rap because Pluto is about evolution, and we don't like to evolve because it means we have to look at the things that are difficult. Power struggles are difficult to understand because they're hidden deep within our unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind is also known as the shadow. And this is why Pluto is known as a planet that indicates where we're going to have to go into the darkness. And that's where the shadow is. So there's an invitation with Pluto to be contemplative. Now, power is, as I see it, as I'm going to speak to it today, is about our ability to have sovereignty and autonomy over ourselves, to be able to direct our lives in the ways that we truly want, to feel that we have say-so over our life, that we're calling the shots. And of course, all of this kind of boils down to this feeling that we're in control. But often we project that outwards, and we'll see that in astrology, wherever Pluto is in your chart, you will have a tendency to project power in that area of your life or onto other people. So most people like to think that they have power and that they're sovereign and that they have say-so over their lives, right? Very few people will admit that they lack power. However, most human beings do lack power. And the reason for this is because we're very entangled with other people, circumstances, and experiences and things. And we do not like to identify with words like entangled or even enmeshed. Enmeshed is a really good Pluto word or a way to describe our struggle with boundaries. This is exactly where our deepest shadows and struggles are, is in this energy of entanglement and enmeshment. So to be entangled or enmeshed means that we're attached to what other people do, think, or say, or how they behave. And that attachment that we have to them is a cord of power that we attach to them. And of course, they to us. But in regards to the way we want to be thinking about it today, it's our cord of power that we are sending out to them. And power is a subtle energy. Power is very connected to the unconscious, which, as if you've heard me before, I say is a slippery little fish. And this is because power is unseen. It's intangible. You can't touch it. You can't see it or hold it, right? Power is connected with what is happening on the inside of us and in our thoughts. And we can source power from our lives in a way that inspires us, and we can source it from within ourselves, or it can be that we bind ourselves to other human beings to elicit power from them. So, for example, if you're entangled with your work, then you have this cord of unseen energy connected to your work. And then let's say things don't go according to plan. What happens is a surge of unpleasant emotions, fill up your body. Now, that isn't right or wrong. This is just an experience. We're witnessing how does power work. Another example could be, let's say you're entangled or you're enmeshed with a partner, maybe a parent or a friend. This means you have a cord of energy that is connected to what they do, what they say, how they behave. And if they suddenly don't do what you have wanted them to do, they don't say something that makes you feel good, then maybe you get this surge of unpleasant emotions that happen on the inside of you. And what does that do to your capacity to be in your own body and have peace? It inhibits it. And this is because you're sourcing power from them, from wanting them to be what you want them to be. So, as you can imagine, this is really not a great way to source power, because people and circumstances are inherently never going to be what we want them to be, and they're not going to necessarily align with what we think life should be or shouldn't be. So we often try to use this cord of attachment of our power with other people to try to control them. And this happens from one person to the next because each person's trying to source power from the other. So each person is trying to control the subtle energy of the other person by behaviors, words, or actions. But as you know, this almost never works. And not only that, this is how we stay stuck in karmic cycles. A karmic cycle is the cycle of trying to get power from someone or something outside of you. That could be a person, that could be your job, that could be an animal, it could be a lot of things. But it's, again, this karmic cycle is trying to get power from something outside of you instead of what's inside of you. Because in order to get power from what's inside of you, you must be truly connected to your own desires, and the desires not being subject to another person, place, or thing. Now, this is, of course, slightly complex, and in order to tend to and get into this karmic cycle, there's a need to connect to your unconscious mind, to your shadow, and to your programming. And this is not something that you can learn through a podcast. This is something that you're either going to need to learn how to do in a one-to-one session, or you're going to have to teach yourself how to do it. And this is because the only way to truly learn hidden wisdom is through practices of embodiment. You cannot get wisdom through listening. You have to take what you hear and you have to take it into the secret place, into the quiet place, into solitude, and you have to contemplate it. You have to swirl it around inside of yourself and think consciously about it. And this is a great representation of what this year invites us into with the hermit energy, which is all about that secret place. And of course, if this is something that you are looking to work with somebody and this interests you, reach out to me because this is what I specialize in supporting other people to learn how to do for themselves. Okay, now coming back to the boundaries. Everyone is talking about boundaries. And as I said, boundaries is strongly related to power. And unfortunately, most people are talking about boundaries from a very unconscious way of thinking, meaning that they're looking at boundaries as something that you need to protect yourself. And that's how the unconscious creates boundaries. But to become conscious is to realize that boundaries are not about protecting you from other people. And instead, learning that boundaries are about you detaching yourself from other people, detaching yourself from needing other people to be what you think they should be. See, we don't need boundaries with people that we aren't overly involved with because we inherently aren't looking for them to be any different than they are, right? We are able to hold space for them being different because we don't have an expectation for them to meet a need for us. So it's very important when you think about setting boundaries in your life that you understand that consciously creating boundaries has nothing to do with other people being our problem. Other people are not our problem. There really isn't a problem. There is only an opportunity. And the opportunity here is to see that a boundary is about recognizing where we have been overly attached to someone in an unhealthy way. This unhealthy attachment might be wanting someone to see us, understand us, to get us, to do something to make us happy, or respond in a way that we want them to. That is an unhealthy attachment. And this is what causes us to lose power, to live in stress, and to literally be in pain in our bodies. Because again, power, subtle energy, attachments, subtle energy, unseen energy. But it is energy. And energy is creating our body. It's creating everything. So again, we do not need boundaries because other people are a problem. We need them to create space between us and other people or us and other circumstances. So the invitation is to detach from wanting people to be different than they are. To detach is to energetically release the need for someone to meet our needs. So this means that we have to notice, where are we trying to get our needs met through the attachments we have? Because if we're going to detach from someone and we've been looking for them or circumstance to meet our needs, then we're going to have to figure out how to meet our needs in another way. So boundaries are for us to learn how to meet our own needs. So consciously creating a boundary is about what you are doing in a relationship to another person and how you are choosing to relate to them. So this means that you're choosing to change the way you relate to another person so that you're not expecting them to meet your needs and instead learning how to meet them for yourself. So creating a boundary could look like you choose to limit how you communicate with someone. For example, you don't call them and tell them everything that's happening in your life and look for their approval. So that would require, that you notice that you are trying to get a need met of approval. And that you are going to choose to no longer do that to that person. So this might mean that you're going to stop oversharing with a partner, a friend, or parent, and instead learn how to affirm yourself. Learn how to sit with what's happening in your life for yourself. So you're going to have to go through a process of learning to be in that hermit energy of inner contemplation. This means trusting yourself. This means believing that you have what it takes to figure out what's happening in your life. This means not putting all of the things that are happening in your life into someone else's lap. That's a boundary. That's seeing where you end and they begin. Another example is that you could choose to limit the amount of time that you spend with a person because you realize you are over giving your time to them in order to try to meet a need. Maybe it's a need of feeling important. So if you want to feel important in order to meet that need and not put it on another person, then you would need to begin to invest in figuring out what makes you feel good that's not related to other people. This might mean looking for something that you're passionate about, something you want to learn, something you want to invest yourself in. So, in order to notice this boundary, it would mean that you've noticed that you're trying to find all your meaning within a relationship. So, the boundary problem here is that you have lost yourself in the relationship. So to be able to get back to yourself, find that self-worth, then you would be invited to connect with the things that you want to be doing for your own life. Another example might be when you say no to something you don't want to do rather than saying yes. That would be a boundary, right? If you don't want to do something, you learn how to say no. And then in this space, you may need to learn how to hold space for the other person being misunderstanding you or being upset with you. So this means you have to give yourself the ability to make choices for yourself, whether or not other people understand them. And when you do this, you'll also create space for other people to say no to you, and you won't take it personally either. So, like I said, these are highly subtle and slippery energies because our attachments are so deeply held within our unconscious mind. And in order to get into the shadow and the unconscious, you need to pay a lot of attention and you need to have a lot of intention. This is why this is a great year for this, because it's the Hermit year, and that means that there's a great energy available for paying closer attention to yourself. And this comes coming back to Pluto. This is very symbolic of how we will evolve. The way to evolve is to go deep into your own psyche, to understand why you're doing things, to see your shadow, to see the things that you don't want to see about yourself. And at some point, I will be doing a whole episode on the shadow because it is highly misunderstood. And this is the Hermit energy for 2025, right? The Hermit energy is very strong for coming away from society and culture and outside influences. The Hermit energy is an invitation for solitude. I like to think of the hermit crab because nature is always giving us symbolism and speaking to us about energy. And this archetype, this image of the hermit, is someone that carries its home on its back. So to embody this hermit energy, part of this is learning that we are home within ourselves, that our body is our home, that we don't need to go to four walls of a perfectly curated space that we can actually create this inner place of peace and calm exactly where we are. And what's interesting about the hermit crab is that they actually rarely live alone. They typically live in colonies. And this is important because there is a part of the hermit crab energy that is very much about solitude. But it doesn't mean that you have to be completely abandoning the world around you. Rather, it's this capacity to be on your individual path or to individuate, which means it's possible to learn to be on your own, to be at home in your own body, to be on your own path, but to not need to completely avoid everyone else. The hermit energy is also strongly related to the energy of the mystic. And as I mentioned, this is an archetype I am strongly related to. The mystic is someone who is connected to source, to spirit, to the unseen world, without anyone else being involved. It's simply you and spirit. It's your ability all by yourself to be in the seen and the unseen world. This is communing with spirit without needing some pastor or preacher or spiritual person to be present. So someone who embodies the mystic energy is someone who has cultivated inner peace, just like the hermit, this inner ability to be on your own. It's someone that is intuitive, grounding to be around, and someone that is seeking to understand and know the deep mysteries of life and within oneself. Now, you do not have to only embody this hermit or mystic energy in 2025. You can do anything that you want to do in 2025. You may have an incredibly expansive year in 2025, and that's going to be amazing. This is rather just an invitation to learn from these energies and these archetypes, to remember them throughout the year, to remember what boundaries are, to remember what it means to come inward and to give yourself time and space for solitude and contemplation. So as we embark on this new year, you may want to be asking yourself and looking into where you have outsourced your power. And initially, you may not want to admit this. You may say to yourself, I'm not outsourcing my power, but you can always find out how you are outsourcing any kind of power by asking yourself, in what situations do I feel anxious? In what ways am I getting triggered? In what ways do I feel insecure? Or in what ways am I frustrated? So frustration, triggers, insecurity, anxiety, these are all indications that we've given our power away in relationships. And so wherever that's happening, that's where we're being invited to learn how to create boundaries and to meet our own needs. So remember not to be hard on yourself, because being hard on ourselves does not support our growth. We do not want to use words like we should or we have to or we need to. Those are oppressive. It's an oppressive language way of speaking to ourselves. So we want to be giving ourselves time and space to know that we don't need to have it all figured out, that we're all on a journey of learning, and that 2025 is an invitation to deepen into our own journey, to say yes to listening to ourselves. And that does not have to be this should or have to energy. So as I've said a few times, no one else has the answers for you. This is a year of going inward to get the answers. Now, that doesn't mean you don't work with people, but it does mean that when you work with people, you listen closely to what they're saying and do not take everything that they say as the truth. Because all clarity for ourselves is going to be found from knowing ourselves. And that's really the task at hand for this year is, do you know yourself? This is one of the greatest challenges and the greatest lessons that humans are here to learn. To know ourselves means to know all parts. And all parts includes our shadow, which is inherently a part of us that we have pushed down, suppressed, and labeled as bad or not good. And I'm not saying that those parts are bad or not good. I'm saying that this is the way that we operate with the shadow until we bring shadow into consciousness. So we're being invited to see ourselves, to understand ourselves, to release judgment from ourselves, and to learn and grow. There is so much magic that is waiting for you in this year. And please remember that magic is not just found when everything is going great and perfect. It can be found there, and it's amazing when it is. But sometimes the greatest magic is found in the uncertainty, in stepping out into something that's unknown. It can be found in the challenge or the difficulty. It can be found in, confrontation. And that's when you suddenly get the realization that, you know, things are lining up. That's when you suddenly see the synchronicity. That's when you realize, oh, that closed door and that opportunity you thought you missed was actually a pivot for you to move in the next right direction. So keep your mind open in 2025. Invite in some flexibility to possibilities. And if you're interested in some one-to-one sessions or astrology readings, somatic work, connect with me at kismetmystic.com or find me on Instagram. Reach out. I'd love to support you. But other than that, I really wish you a mystical 2025. I'm going to be back soon with more podcasts and just sharing more of my heart and my own journey. I hope you have an amazing 2025. Bye for now.